All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of your Mind Body Detox. And this week, we're going to talk about easing into a safe and gentle detox. Now, of course, we've been easing into this safe and gentle detox already because I gave you some tips to be following as far as transitioning in your initial video about 2 weeks ago. So hopefully you've been weaning off of caffeine, avoiding fried foods, eating more fresh foods, reducing your sugar intake, getting better hydration, things like that. Hopefully that's already been your process. And before we dive in, I do want to check in with you about your exercise from last week, your thought recognition, as well as the Ho'oponopono. And I'm just curious, how have you been doing with that? What's it been like for you to recognize when you're creating an undesirable reality for yourself, to recognize that your feelings are actually coming from your thinking in the moment? What did you notice happens for you? What do you notice happens for you after you have that realization? How do things play out? Is it different than it usually, than it has been in the past? What's your experience with Ho'oponopono so far? Saying the phrases, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And taking full responsibility for whatever is coming up within your consciousness. How has that shifted your life? I want to know. So please share in the forum. Now, a quick overview before we get into things. We are going to be talking about pH testing today, as well as your supplements, and I'll give you a recommended schedule to follow. We'll talk about the foods, as well as the daily guidelines to help reduce detox reactions and symptoms. And of course, all of this is in your handbook, but I just want to make sure that we are having a discussion about it. And I'll also talk about the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, because, of course, we're continually working on deepening our understanding of how experience is created and, how we can let go, detox our mental and emotional toxins. So we're going to continue with that this week. And, I'll summarize at the end and I'll give you some assignments and then we'll call it a day. We definitely have a lot to cover. So before we get into that, I just want to invite you to slow down, take a couple of deep breaths here. Quiet your mind, let your thoughts settle, empty your mind so that it can be filled with something new, maybe something that hasn't occurred to you before. And of course, I would encourage you as we're going through the presentation, especially as we're talking about your gentle phase of your detox, as we're talking about the changes that you're going to be making, the pH testing, and all of that, I would encourage you to notice when your mind starts to wander into fear and anxiety and overwhelm. Notice that as thinking. Use your thought recognition during the presentation and bring yourself back to the present moment. Connect with your breath and just open up and listen so that you can really receive the information that's being shared and so that you can see it as an opportunity rather than a burden. All right, so here we go. Okay, first of all, your pH testing. If you haven't already started playing with this, definitely you want to start this week. Your handbook has instructions for how to carry out these tests and interpret the results. And so make sure that you complete all 3 of the tests, the saliva, the urine, and the lemon test. And know that you must pass all 3 of these, and you'll see in your result interpretation what passing is. for each of the tests before going into the deep phase. And the deep phase of our detox is the all liquids phase. So you must pass all three before going into that deep phase. If not, it may be pretty uncomfortable for you. So I just encourage you to, not put pressure on yourself to do the deep phase. You don't have to do that. It's not mandatory. And of course, detoxing is something that we should do, once or twice a year. So you'll have another opportunity. I encourage you to think about this as the beginning or the continuation, depending on where you're at with detoxing in general, as the beginning or a continuation of something that you're going to be doing regularly, a couple times a year. So you've got time to get into the deep phase. You don't have to do that this time. And the pH testing, it's going to help to predict your ability to quickly realkalinize once you're mobilizing toxins. And it does that through gauging your mineral reserves. And it's these buffering or alkalinizing minerals that make the difference. Because when we start mobilizing toxins, there is this acidification that happens. And if we don't have enough of these alkalizing minerals on board, then we're not going to be able to realkalinize quickly and bring ourselves back into balance. And it's going to hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable for us. So using pH testing will help to not only predict, but protect your comfort level. And you want to test 2 to 3 days before beginning your gentle phase with all 3 tests. So by midweek this week, you should take a day to do that, or you can do that over a couple of days. And test every 3 days during your gentle phase. So you may do this, 2 to 3 times, during this process, depending on how long you stay in the gentle phase. And of course, record your results in your log or even in a notebook if that's better for you. And just remember that before your saliva and lemon tests, make sure that you haven't had any food or juice 2 hours prior to the testing. And I will say before I go into the information on this next slide, pH testing is pretty simple. You will have to plan, especially on the day that you do your urine test, because you're testing every time you go to the bathroom, you urinate. So just make sure to have your pH strips handy. And, it's just a quick in and out of the urine stream, read the result right away and, throw your pH strip away and just make sure you write down your result, or you could record it in your phone if that's easier for you in notes. But it's pretty simple. You just have to plan. And then as far as our gentle phase, I just want you to know that this phase is all about slow and steady detoxing. And this is a time for you to really focus on nourishing foods that are going to help to alkalinize your tissues as well as replenish your minerals. So if you get a low pH score initially, your gentle phase is going to help build your mineral reserves up. And you will see as time goes on, because you're going to be monitoring every 3 days in your gentle phase, you'll start to see the pH, your numbers go up. And of course, if you're not, then then that's something to look at. What's going on? Do you need more alkalinizing foods? Do you need to increase your greens powder? Do you, if your pH is really low, you might want to look at drinking bone broth as well. But you should see those numbers going up, especially because you're also taking acidifying foods out. You're taking processed foods out, fried foods, really focusing on a lot of alkalinizing, mineral-rich foods. So you should, if you're following the plan, you should see that number go up as time goes on. And your solid foods set the pace. So the gentle phase, we're keeping solid foods in, and they, the more solid foods you have in, the slower the detox is going to be. And we want that in the beginning because we're building our mineral reserves up and we're preparing ourselves to be able to do an all liquids phase safely and comfortably. And our foods in this gentle phase are fresh, they're unprocessed. some of the big tenets are there are no gluten, dairy, eggs, added sugar, nightshades, caffeine, coffee, peanuts, fried foods, packaged foods. Those are all out. So make sure and look at your yes, please food list as well as your not now, so you know what foods that you should be eating and should be avoiding. And, in general, go for about 60 to 80% cooked foods and 20 to 40% raw, like smoothies, juices, sprouts, salads. If you tend to have weaker digestion, say you have IBS or you struggle with constipation, diarrhea, or, reflux or heartburn, bloating, then you definitely want to stay more on the cooked side. Maybe having more cooked foods and soups, and which can be a time saver anyway, making big crock pots of veggie soups and, with some lentils or beans if you can handle those. And then, with raw foods, maybe sticking to just your smoothies and juices instead of salads and things that are going to be harder to break down and digest. And of course, during the gentle phase, we're having at least 32 ounces per day of smoothies or juice. And again, if you have weaker digestion, you can certainly add some ginger into your smoothies and juice. That does help to stimulate digestion. And as far as hydration, the rule of thumb is half your weight in your body weight in ounces of pure water. So if you're 120 pounds, that's 60 ounces of pure water daily in general. As far as your supplements, so we're going to start low and go slow with all of these. So start with just a teaspoon of green protein powder. Remember that should contain spirulina and or broken cell wall chlorella, and 1 capsule of activated charcoal each day. And you can work up to taking 3 teaspoons of green protein powder per day and 2 to 4 capsules of activated charcoal each day. And what you want to do is take half the activated charcoal upon waking, and charcoal is going to help mop up toxins, basically. So you also don't want to take it with your food. You want to take it at least 30 minutes before eating, because it can bind nutrients and any other supplements. So take it 30 to 60 minutes before eating in the morning, and the other half 2 hours after your last meal of the day. And then with the greens powder, I recommend breaking that up throughout the day. So 1 teaspoon 3 times a day rather than 1 tablespoon at once. So 1 teaspoon 3 times a day, it's going to help with energy and satiety. And, take your bitters with your meals to help stimulate digestion, and a probiotic each morning and evening. You can just take the probiotic once a day, but I encourage you to do it twice a day during your detox, because we want to support digestion. We want to support the health of your gut during this process as well. So here's a recommended schedule that you could follow. So let's say 7 a.m. you take your activated charcoal, so 1 to 2 capsules. When you're starting out, just take 1, and then you can work your way up to 2. And then 30 minutes later, at least 30 minutes later, say 7:30 a.m., take your bitters with your breakfast and as well as your smoothie or juice, with 1 teaspoon of green powder added to the smoothie, 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and start with 1 teaspoon if this isn't something you've been doing, and you can work your way up to 1 tablespoon, over about a week. And then 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon of maca powder. And hopefully you've already been working with the maca at this point, and you've worked yourself up a bit, but that's okay if you haven't. Start out with 1 teaspoon, work up to 1 tablespoon, and of course to your own tolerance too. Maca is stimulating. For some people, they're going to feel it a lot more quickly than others. So 1 teaspoon for one person may be plenty, and they may feel energized with that and not need to go up any further. But some people may require more to feel, the level of energization that they're wanting to feel. And then a teaspoon to 1 tablespoon, again, you can work your way up, of Inner Eco coconut kefir water. This is optional. You could also take a probiotic, or you could break a pill open and put it into your smoothie. That's fine. But I do like the coconut kefir water because it is a living food and it is just teeming with beneficial bacteria and a broad spectrum of beneficial bacteria. So I do highly recommend this. You can find it in the refrigerated section of your health food store. It's in a glass bottle with the probiotics, refrigerated, and you keep it refrigerated at home as well. And then around noon, take your bitters again with your lunch, and then have your juice or smoothie with 1 teaspoon of greens powder and 1 teaspoon to 1 tablespoon of your maca powder. And this is optional if you feel you need that extra energy boost, and that's helpful for you, then do it. If not, you certainly don't have to. And then at around 5:30, a teaspoon of bitters with dinner, juice or smoothie with 1 teaspoon of green powder, and then 1 probiotic or 1 teaspoon of Inner Eco. And then around 7:30, 2 hours later or 2 hours after dinner, you would have your activated charcoal at 1 to 2 capsules. And remember, as you're starting out, go for the lower end. And then between meals, you're welcome to snack if you like and if you need. This is not about restricting. So if you feel hungry between meals, please eat. We don't want your blood sugar dropping. And on that end, as far as regulating blood sugar, make sure you're having protein and fat with your meals. And when you have a snack, have protein and fat as well. So even just a handful of, or maybe not even a full handful, but some sprouted nuts or seeds will give you protein, fat, and fiber. It'll be very filling. And of course, you can pair that up with some extra vegetables if you want, or a piece of fruit. That's fine. And then between meals also, this is, when I encourage you to be sipping on your detox and adaptogen teas. Now, your protein sources, just so we're all clear, during your gentle phase are going to be your green powder, your spirulina, broken cell wall chlorella, and then soaked and sprouted beans, lentils, allowed nuts and seeds. And, if you haven't been doing beans and or any of these, I definitely recommend sprouting first. And, if you're going to soak beans and cook them, even with these, if you haven't been eating them much, like if you've been following more of a paleo plan, then, have small amounts at first. Work your way up with these. And you might even just stick to lentils as far as, legumes go if you've been following a paleo plan. Or you could sprout the beans and, use them in salads. But I certainly found that transitioning from paleo into this detox, the beans didn't quite agree with me. So I focused on lentils and nuts and seeds, all sprouted. And then wild salmon and sardines, you can keep some animal protein in. And if you do, this is what I would recommend. Some people will need to do that, especially if you have trouble regulating your blood sugar, if you have diabetes, and if you have adrenal fatigue as well. Keeping some animal protein in can be really helpful for you. And if you don't know whether or not you have adrenal fatigue, you can take a free quiz at adrenalquiz.com. And here, just follow answer the questions. You'll have to enter your email address. You'll get some emails from the creator of the quiz after that, Dr. Alan Christensen, but they're all very informative. And you can take the quiz as many times as you want to monitor over time. But if you end up with crashed as your result, I highly recommend that you keep the wild salmon and sardines in. And then, of course, as far as other protein sources, you can use vegan protein powders like pea protein, collagen peptides, as well as bone broth. And again, if you've got adrenal fatigue, if you're crashed, keeping those animal sources in would be a good idea, as well as the bone broth. And let's see. That's what I wanted to say about that. Yeah. Okay. So fat. We're going to be eating less fat than usual. And this helps to support detoxification, helps us to mobilize toxins more quickly. And so for your detox, not on an everyday basis, but just for your detox, limiting your fat to 30 to 40 grams per day is the recommendation. So in order to do this, you need to kind of keep a tight check on your oils. If you're using like an olive oil or avocado oil, coconut oil, I would encourage you to measure it because it adds up really quickly, especially if you're pouring it. So measure these out and kind of keep track. You can calculate your intake, maybe for the first couple of days via MyFitnessPal or Calorie King can be helpful. But overall, your sources of fats are going to be, besides oils, are going to be nuts and seeds, olives, avocado, and then, of course, if you're keeping meats in, salmon and sardines. And by the way, if you just hate salmon and hate sardines, but you do want to keep some animal protein in, and you can handle other forms of fish, it's okay to branch out into those. Make sure they're wild, cold water fish like cod or mackerel. Okay. So sugar, 25 to 35 grams per day would be best. But do your best and don't stress about this. I mean, you're not going to be having any added sugars during this time. Fruits are going to be your main source of sugars, so just don't overdo them. I would say limit it to about 2 pieces of sweeter fruit per day, and focus on green smoothies and juices as much as possible. And you can use some sweeter fruit to help sweeten that up. But really focus on the green and the veggie aspect of these smoothies and juices. And also, bring in low sugar fruits like berries, kiwi, Granny Smith apples. These are really nice. Kiwi, I find, is really nice because it is so low in sugar, but it's got a nice sweetness to it. Helps to sweeten up your smoothie or your juice. And remember that dried fruits have more sugar. So I like to use a little bit of these, maybe a chopped up dried apricot or 2, in a big salad just for a flavor pop, or some, raisins or currants, but not just, taking a handful of them and eating them. Just follow those rules of thumb, don't stress out about it. And as far as daily guidelines for staying ahead of detox reactions, some of the stuff we've already covered, it just sort of overlaps, but drinking 32 ounces of juice or smoothies per day is going to help alkalinize your tissues because you're getting a lot of vegetables in this way and fiber. Drink at least 12 ounces of coconut water by itself, or you could do lemon water with a pinch of sea or pink salt. Pink salt is my preference. Or veggie or bone broth with some sea or pink salt. And this is just to help keep your electrolytes in check. And so that you're staying well hydrated as well. So make sure that you're doing that. That's a must. Using one of these options. If coconut water is too expensive, go with the lemon water with salt or the veggie or bone broth with salt. And then take 1 to 2 capsules of your activated charcoal each morning and evening to help mop up toxins so that, toxins aren't being recirculated and, causing more work for the liver and causing you to feel symptoms. If you feel extreme nausea in the middle of the day, you can certainly take your activated charcoal again. So you can take it as needed in that case. And of course, drink it along with or take it along with some water with a little bit of lemon juice. And of course, like I've already mentioned, hydrate, at least 40 to 64 ounces of pure water per day. But in general, half your body weight in ounces is a good rule of thumb. And then you're also going to be having your smoothies and juices. Sip on your detox and adaptogen teas throughout the day. Give your liver some support as well as, give yourself some energy support with the adaptogens. And if you're, have nausea or upset stomach, peppermint or ginger tea, either cool or hot, can be really helpful. Make sure you're getting at least about 1 teaspoon of spirulina powder in per day. So if your green powder, is a combination of spirulina and some others, you should be getting about a teaspoon's worth, with 3 teaspoons of your green powder per day. So that should work. And then use essential oils for detox support, both mentally and physically. That can really help you to combat any detox symptoms and prevent them. And of course, staying aware of your 7 channels of elimination, making sure that these are open. So your lungs, getting some light exercise, anything that's going to cause you to, breathe at a little bit faster rate or in a more focused way. So a light walk or hike, nothing too extreme. Yoga would be great, because you're really focusing on the breath there, doing some deep breathing. And there's also breath work that you can do, breath of fire, alternate nostril breathing. You could look into these. As far as your blood, that light exercise is going to help, get things moving there, as well as for the lymph. Yoga, stretching and twisting. These are all really good. Skin brushing, which you've got some instructions for. It helps both blood and lymph circulation, especially lymph. It also helps open up the skin, to slough off the dead skin cells. And so it helps to open up that channel as well. Your liver, your detox teas are going to be really important. Those herbs that help support the liver, as well as essential oils, these can help as well. Drinking plenty of water to keep things moving through the colon. Getting your fiber, taking your flax or your chia seed, as well as your activated charcoal. Let's see what else for the colon. Like there was another one. Exercise, light exercise, and yoga and twisting can help as well. If you find that you're constipated, you can use enemas if you're up for that. Just up to 1 a day throughout your cleanse can be helpful, or you can even schedule a colonic just in general to help move things out, either the first day or on day 4 or 5 can be helpful. And kidneys, drinking plenty of water. Some of these herbs and the detox teas are going to help with your kidneys, support your kidneys. And your skin, like I said, anything that's going to open up your pores. So sweating, so some light exercise, sauna, hot baths, showers, a nice hot Epsom salt soak. All that is going to be very helpful. And of course, we want to keep all these channels open, because even if one becomes compromised, it's more work for the liver. So keeping all of these channels open and using your handbook, going to your handbook and really reading the details on all of these in the section there is highly recommended. So stay aware of these channels of elimination and keeping them open. And of course, stay positive. This is very alkalinizing for you. If you're complaining and allowing yourself to get caught up in stress and overwhelm, all thinking, then it is very acidifying to your tissues. So stay positive. One of the things that's going to help you the most is planning ahead and staying prepped and stocked. I can't say enough about this. So plan ahead, stay prepped, stay stocked, don't run out of anything. Always have food available that you can eat. That's the key. And, continue to practice thought recognition and ho'oponopono. Anytime you find yourself stressed and feeling overwhelmed, you are caught up in thought. Because remember, your feelings are directly related to the quality of your thinking. Your feelings are giving you feedback about your thinking in the moment, or the quality of your thinking in the moment. So anytime you find yourself not at peace, bring yourself back. Recognize that you're creating this undesirable reality for yourself, and take full responsibility for it. Clean it out of your consciousness. Continue to use the ho'oponopono, to release any resistance that you have to this process. So in summary, for your gentle phase, you're going to start out by assessing your readiness to detox and assessing your mineral reserves with the pH testing 2 to 3 days before starting your gentle phase. All 3 tests. And test your pH every 3 days during your gentle phase. And of course, keep a record of these results. And then begin taking your supplements and following the schedule that I laid out here today. And as you begin your gentle phase, I mean, this really is about now, after some time of transitioning, beginning to strictly avoid the not now foods and only having the yes, please foods. And of course, follow the daily guidelines and support the opening of your 7 channels of elimination. Really keep this at the forefront of your mind. If you start to have any symptoms, go back to your 7 channels of elimination in their handbook and really read through those daily guidelines and make sure you're doing all of those, that you've got everything in check. And if you're not, make sure you're following those guidelines to help mitigate your symptoms. And stretch yourself as far as is possible for you at this time. So I really want to make that clear. I do not expect perfection from you. I want you to do what is possible for you. So if you're just starting out and you've been eating processed food, haven't been cooking much, you're really just starting your healing journey and starting to eat healthier, maybe just not eating the fried food. Maybe your gentle phase is not eating fried foods, eating more, just staying away from processed foods and eating fresh foods. Maybe that's all that you can do at this time. And if you do, that's great. That's way better than what you've been doing. And, I'd encourage you to look at this from through a big picture kind of lens. You can do what you can during this gentle phase. We have another opportunity. We can do this again, because we're going to be detoxing 1 to 2 times a year. And I hope that you'll come back and detox with me again. Just know that it's okay to do what you can at this time without stressing yourself. Stretch yourself, but don't overwhelm yourself. Okay. Be gentle with yourself, be compassionate, and celebrate your victories and, the progress that you are making. And no matter what, you will benefit from making the changes that you make, period. So keep that in mind. So I do want to get into the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. I want to continue our mind detox. Because it's really important to understand how experience is created so that you can harness these principles to create a beautiful existence and, beautiful, vital health, both physically and emotionally. So take a deep breath, slow down, shift gears. Clear your mind, create space so that you can hear something you've never heard before. So you can allow insight and realization to occur. And that can only happen with a quiet mind. So get reconnected with your breath here if you got off track. And we'll dive in. So understanding your experience, like I was saying, really is the key to our well-being, because it's what we fear about our experience is what we don't understand. And the reason we fear our experience is because we don't understand it. So today is really about understanding how experience is created, and how it works every time for every person who has ever lived, including you. When you understand that it's always working as it was designed to work, and you understand how it works and how it is created, there is no limit to the beauty that you can call forth into your life. Because when you know how to create a beautiful experience, that's what you can do. Versus if you don't know what it takes to create experience, what those principles are, if you're unaware, you're going to get it right sometimes. And then most of the time, though, you're going to be just caught up in your you're feeling and not knowing where that comes from and not understanding, what's going on. You're more of a victim of life rather than a participant in it. So that's the reason why I really want to make sure you understand the mechanics of how your experience is created so that you can step into the driver's seat of your own destiny. So the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, I just want to highlight here that these are not concepts. These actually point to something very real and always true about your moment-to-moment experience. And the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought are actually present in all spiritual wisdom traditions and teachings. Even, so like enlightenment, Zen, Buddhism, yogic philosophy, you'll find the 3 principles there. And you'll even find them in Christianity. It just depends on how you're interpreting, Christ's teachings. But, if you ever read the work of Paramahansa Yogananda, who is responsible for bringing yoga to the West and taught self-realization, he often references Jesus's teachings, but he interprets them in a little bit different way, actually a much more positive way than what we're maybe used to hearing. And you can, when you know the 3 principles, you'll see how they're at play even in Jesus Christ's teachings. So today I would just, though, encourage you to listen beyond the words, as always, because it's not about the words. It's about your experience and the insights and revelations that occur for you and how you understand these principles to be real and at play in your life. That's what's going to make the most difference for you. So before I get into talking specifically about the 3 principles, I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson, just so that you can see, the overall development of the 3 principles or our understanding of them, right? Because they've always been at play. So William James, who is credited as the founder of American psychology, in his seminal work in 1890, The Principles of Psychology, he expressed the need for foundational causal principles and laws in psychology that represented true human nature. And he knew that these existed, and he left a lot of clues in his writing, but he never fully discovered them himself. And to this day, we could easily say that no agreement has been reached within the field of psychology. But he was onto something, and his notion was that, and this is in his words, such knowledge realized on a large scale would be an achievement with which the control of the rest of physical nature would be relatively insignificant. So basically, he knew that if we could figure out these principles, how the human experience is created, what really makes us tick, what's really behind behavior, it would be a total game changer for people on an individual level, but also a game changer for humanity. And a little later down the road, these principles were actually realized. And of course, like I mentioned, these principles, the 3 principles, are present in, the oldest of wisdom traditions, but they were never articulated in a way that, the regular person could understand them. So a man by the name of Sydney Banks, maybe about 50 years later, who was not spiritual, not looking for any kind of enlightenment experience, not really trying to figure out the meaning of life. This regular guy, which I think is what makes this so cool and so special. He's a Scottish welder living in Salt Springs Island, Canada. Had a profound enlightenment experience. And he saw that there were universal psychological principles behind the human experience. And he was the first person to articulate the principles in a way that could be very easily understood. And basically his whole notion was that if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone could change the world. So this is why we're talking about these 3 principles, because, our suffering comes from resisting any aspect of our experience and being afraid of our experience. So Sydney Banks felt that if all we did was just learn not to be afraid of our experience, that we could, that alone would change the world. So as we, before we dive in, I keep prefacing, I keep stalling, but I just want to make sure you understand that words in general, concepts, images, these are all inherently limited. These can only be used to point to something that is true. So remember that the map itself is not the territory. No matter how detailed and intricate the map is, it will never be the territory. To understand the territory, you have to go there. You have to see it for yourself. It's just like if you're thirsty, if I show you a picture of water, that's not going to quench your thirst. You have to actually drink the water to have your thirst quenched and to experience the gift of water. So that's how it is with these 3 principles, okay? And these are invisible facts, not theories or models. These are facts, and they're at play every moment, in this moment right now. And of course, the fact that they're invisible makes it a little tricky. You can't see them with your analytical mind. It takes a different kind of sight to see and understand these facts. So you have to look beyond the words, beyond the concepts, with a different kind of sight. Feel, or look for a feeling. Listen for a feeling. Because as Sydney Banks said, wisdom is not learned. It's not a formula, 2 + 2 = 4 kind of formula. It's something that is unfolded within one's own consciousness. When such knowledge appears to a person, it is revealed in a form that some may call an insight. An insight is seeing within yourself, seeing something within. That's what creates the most transformation for you, and that will create the most transformation for you in examining these principles. And we'll start very basic. First of all, what is a principle? Because a lot of times people kind of misconstrue the word principle. It's thought of as, just a set of rules or beliefs. But a principle is actually, and this is the way I'm using it in this context, a principle is a foundational, universal truth or law of nature that explains how something happens or works. So, important to note here, universal means that it's always true and constant under any circumstance. Okay, and it's constant, meaning it never stops working. It's always at play, like gravity. Right? It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, what you're wearing. If you step off of a cliff, you're going to fall. So gravity works all the time. It's a constant. And these principles are no different. And it also explains, in that it explains how something works, you can think about it as physics. And it also has these principles also, or a principle in general, has a very predictable nature. It is inevitable. So it always plays out. So the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought are a description of the forces that are creating our entire experience of life from moment to moment. And they're a description of how the mind works, as well as the true source of well-being, as well as how it gets obscured or seemingly lost. Notice that I'm highlighting the word description. Okay, this is an attempt to describe these invisible forces. It's not a prescription for how to live your life. We're not looking at how to live your life. We're looking at how life works here. We're looking at understanding how life works. So the principle of mind with a capital M, it's the source and intelligence behind all of life. Some call it God, the universe, the divine, impersonal mind, the fertile void, great spirit, allness, oneness, great mystery, etc. It doesn't really matter what you call it, though, because it never changes. What you call it doesn't change anything about it. It is, like I said, the intelligence behind all of life. Mind is infinite possibility and pure potential. It's the source of love and wisdom. And we're not separate from mind. Mind is always at play in our experience. You know, if you think about mind, how might you be seeing this in your life? If you pause for a moment and just notice, you've been breathing this whole time. You aren't consciously breathing, right? Your heart's been beating. You haven't been beating your heart. There's an intelligence within you that is not only beating your heart and breathing your lungs, blinking your eyes, but carrying out, orchestrating, driving thousands of chemical reactions all at the same time. You know, the firing of neurons as well. You know, if you look at nature, pick up a leaf and look at the intricate detail in that leaf. Notice how the seasons change. Nobody has to tell them to change. Nobody has to do anything. They just change. And all of nature goes right along with it. What's keeping the planets in alignment and in rotation? There's an intelligent force behind all of life that is the essence of existence. That's mind. It's always at play. Now, the principle of consciousness is pure awareness. It's just the fact that we are aware. And some may call it home, beingness, essence, soul, the silent witness. Consciousness is that which allows us to be aware of life, that which everything appears to. It's the impersonal, still, quiet space within, where all thoughts arise and subside, come and go. It's like the screen. You know, if you think about a movie theater, any film can be played upon the screen. The screen is neutral. It allows whatever wants to be played upon the screen to be played. It will play a horror film just as easily as it will play a romantic comedy or a documentary. So it's impersonal. It's that quiet space. You know, if you slow the frames down of a film, you'll see the spaces in between. That's consciousness. And it's also described as the eternal now. This moment minus our thoughts about it. So that quiet space when your thoughts are settled, where you're just aware of being alive. That's the principle of consciousness. And then we have the principle of thought. This is, the ability to think. It's not what we think or our personal thinking, but that we think, which is totally impersonal. We're all thinking. That we're thinking, everybody does. What we think, that can vary from person to person. But the principle of thought, the most important aspect to realize about this is that we think. And thought is the formless creative energy out of which we construct the full range of human experience. So mental images, concepts, beliefs, meanings, ideas, perceptions, opinions, judgment, duality, problems, solutions, language, it's all made up of thought. Thought is the power that creates everything you feel. Sydney Banks said, thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created. So mind, consciousness, and thought. Mind plus consciousness plus thought equals reality. This is how our experience is created. If you take any one of these away, you wouldn't have an experience, right? Mind is what is behind all of existence. So if you took that away, if nothing exists, then there's no experience. If you take out consciousness and you just have mind and thought, well, you can't be aware of mind or thought. So there's no experience there. And if you take out thought, well, then there's nothing to be aware of. So all of these principles, these three principles, make up our reality. And we can't have our reality and our experience without all three of these. Dr. Jack Pransky, another articulator, teacher of the three principles, says, all we are is peace, love, and wisdom, and the power to create the illusion that we are not. That is the power of thought. And, of course, the peace, love, and wisdom, that's mind. And to be aware that we are peace, love, and wisdom, that's consciousness. And the power to create is thought. So how do we live the three principles? Basically, from moment to moment, we have the opportunity to wake up to or from the power of thought. Once we recognize that we're just caught up in thought, that our feelings are coming from our thinking, and we just notice that, we can rest in the clarity of consciousness. And as we rest in that quiet space and that clarity of consciousness, what begins to happen is that we fill up with love, wisdom, and well-being, that which comes from mind. So in summary of the three principles, how you can bring these to life in your own life is to realize via insight the true nature of mind, consciousness, and thought, and the implications that this understanding has on your life, on your problems, your insecurities, your fears, your joys, your ups and downs, etc. And, you can use these gifts to create a beautiful existence from moment to moment. You can also use these gifts to create a horrible experience. These gifts, these principles are neutral. They can be used for suffering and they can be used for peace and happiness and vitality. So I'll summarize here with a quote from Sydney Banks. It's rather lengthy, so I'm just going to read it. He said, "Mind is the intelligence of all things. Consciousness makes you aware. And thought is like the rudder of a ship. It guides you through life. And if you learn to use that rudder properly, you can guide your way through life far better than you ever imagined. You can go from one reality to another. You can find your happiness, and when illusionary sadness comes from memories, you don't try to figure it out. Please don't try to do that. You'll get yourself in trouble. All you have to do is realize that it's thought. When you're ready, you will find what you're looking for. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you are. If you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert and it's time for you to find the answer, the right person will appear in the middle of the desert and let you know. He will say something to you that will trigger something inside you. And that's where that life comes from, inside out. It's spiritual knowledge. It's there. Everybody has it, and people don't realize that. There's no human being more spiritual than you. Everybody is equal. And you know what the equality is? That we all derive from mind, consciousness, and thought. That's the equalizer. And while you have that equalizer, you're as good as anybody on this earth. You're as holy as anybody else on this earth. You always have been, always will be. The only thing is you don't see it because of your thoughts. So that, I feel, is a really great summary of the power of using the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, to really create your own reality, a reality that is desirable, that, has you in recognition of who and what you really are. And, something I didn't mention about Sydney Banks is that, or about, his the work that he did with, around the three principles. And when he had his profound enlightenment experience or realization around the three principles, he decided to share them with the world. And that's why we're talking about them today. So of course I want to honor his work, and be an appreciation of that. But I also want to just mention that when he began sharing his work, or as a result of him sharing his work, he was able to reach thousands of people, and even hundreds and thousands of mental health practitioners, psychologists. Even these professionals were drawn to his work. And many of them, once they begin to realize the true nature of mind, consciousness, and thought in their own lives and begin to share them with patients, many of them closed their practices and started over, teaching the three principles, rather than using their traditional training in psychology. So that's really powerful. And they began to, their patients after sharing the three principles, began to get better and realize their own innate well-being. And this was far different than the results that they had ever gotten before. Many, a psychologist and therapist, are out there who will attest to this, from going from their traditional training and techniques to sharing the three principles. So harnessing the power of these principles can have amazing implications in your life, but you have to practice them. And so that's why, I'm giving you these initial practices, especially of the thought recognition, because it really all starts with recognizing that you're thinking, and that you're creating an undesirable reality for yourself, and that your thoughts aren't reality, and that your thoughts or that your feelings are simply giving you feedback about the state of your thinking, not about the outside world. So hopefully this resonates with you. And of course, I encourage you to watch the supportive videos, read the supportive reading, We have some good videos this week to help deepen your understanding of the 3 principles. And of course, from last week as well, if you haven't gotten to watch all of those, make sure you watch them. Because I think it's important for you to hear different perspectives, not just mine, to help, because you never know what's gonna click for you. It may not be anything I've said, but some of the videos or the reading, may really strike a chord with you and trigger that insight that you need. So this week, for your assignments, of course, just listed, encourage you to watch the videos and read the reading. Your exercise for this week is to do something scary. And the point of this exercise is to help you recognize in real time how you're never afraid of what you think you're afraid of. You're afraid of what you think, period. So here's how the exercise goes. This is a bit of an inquiry. If it didn't occur to you to be afraid, what would you do, or what would you be doing in your business, your life, your relationship, this detox that you're not doing right now? So I'm going to get you to ask that question and start taking concrete steps towards that. Do it. And before, during, and after, notice when you're falling for the trick of the mind, that you're feeling something other than you're thinking in the moment. That's the trick of the mind. It would have you think that your feelings are coming from somewhere else, outside of you, circumstances, people, events, past, future. And notice what happens when you recognize and acknowledge where your feelings are really coming from in the moment, which is your thinking. So this is just another aspect of the thought recognition. But we're putting some action with it, some experience with it. And then I have a self-inquiry for you. And this is listed underneath the training video. What thoughts and feelings are coming up for you as you let go of your routine and comfort foods? How are you showing up in your detox and in your life when you are caught up in thought and thought-created feeling versus being aware of your thoughts and looking at them versus through them? Notice what happens when you wake up to what is actually here without those thoughts. Notice what happens when you drop back into now, back into your natural, open, free-flowing mode of thinking. All right, and of course, continue thought recognition in Ho'oponopono. Check and record your pH midweek, all 3 tests. And start your gentle phase this weekend. You could start it as early as Friday, or you may start as late as Sunday. Depends on you. But make sure to do your pH testing 3 days before you start. Make sure you attend the live Q&A this week and submit your questions ahead of time if you can't make it. And then share your experience in the forum, with your exercise, your do something scary, what came up for you with your self-inquiry. What are you continuing to notice, when you catch yourself in creating an undesirable reality? So as you continue to practice thought recognition and Ho'oponopono, share your experience. And of course, you can always ask questions on the Facebook page. Share your results of your pH testing and share recipes. I've given you all some recipes and ideas to start with, but if you come up with some things that you really love and think that others would love, please share that in the forum. All right, as usual, create a beautiful day using the 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, harnessing the power of these. Go out and create a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace and blessings.